everyone. This is a special masterclass because this is a masterclass that is based on probably my most fundamental work. The project that I'm taking on right now is almost as big as Mindvalley in itself. It is the biggest program we've ever launched at Mindvalley. So big that it's not just involving me, but hundreds of the world's greatest minds. More on that in a bit. What you're going to learn in this class with the 50,000 people who are also tuned in is a framework for rethinking, redefining, hacking, transforming almost every aspect of the world you live in. From how you learn, to how you love, to how you see yourself, how you work, how you parent. Now that's a lot of stuff to cram into a 1-hour class. So rather than go into these details, what I'm going to give you instead is a framework so powerful that if you understand this, you get to view the world the way I view it, as something that is malleable, that you can transform, that you can shift, that you have absolute power over. This framework has transformed thousands of lives, and you're going to get it in its entirety here in this masterclass. So, firstly, welcome to Mindvalley's Technology Center. This is our boardroom. I love working here. It's a place that gives me so much inspiration. And rather than just show you screens in my computer, I wanted this to be a little bit more intimate. So we'll be combining screenshots from my laptop, slides to explain what we're talking about, with live footage of me talking directly to you. Today we're going to talk about consciousness engineering. And before we go into what is consciousness engineering, I want to tell you about an experience I had 6 years ago when in almost every sense of the word I stepped into an alternate reality. What happened was I decided to go and spend a week with the Achuar tribes people. Now the Achuar are a tribe in the Ecuadorian Amazon forest. They had only been discovered by modern man in the late 1970s. And so this tribe still preserves most of its way of life. And what I saw there was so incredibly beautiful, but also so incredibly bizarre by normal human definitions, right? So we're not judging the Achuar, but I want to show you what I experienced because it shifted my thinking of the rest of the world. Now, rather than describe what I experienced in the Amazon, we're instead going to imagine that a new neighbor moved into your neighborhood. Let's say his name is Sam, and Sam lives life like the Achuar. So one day Sam invites you to come and spend time with his family. So you walk into Sam's home and he asks you if you want a drink. You say, sure, Sam, give me a glass of water. Sam goes, no, you know, in our home, we don't drink water. And you go, well, what do you drink? And he goes, alcohol. And you tell him, is that the only thing you drink? And Sam goes, yes, the only thing we drink here is alcohol. Would you like to try some? So of course, you're thinking, if this is the alcohol, which is the only substance this family drinks, it must be really good. Yes, I'd love a glass. So Sam hands you a glass of his homemade alcohol. And you taste it, and the taste is hard to describe. When I tasted this, it's called shisha in the Achuar, with the Achuar community in the Ecuadorian Amazon. It was something that I had a really hard time swallowing, but I did it anyway out of respect. And then you ask Sam, what is this? And he goes, oh, that's my wife's saliva. Now this itself is jarring. You see, in the Achuar tribe, they do not drink water. Instead, what happens is the women folk go to a pond. They gather water from the pond. This is the same pond they bathe in, so it's basically bath water. They then put this in bowls, earthenware bowls. In their mouth, they take certain roots that they've harvested from the ground. They chew these roots, and the women folk spend hours after hours after hours chewing these roots in their mouth and then spitting it out into this pond water. This causes the saliva, and the bacteria in the saliva causes the fermentation to occur. The fermentation creates alcohol, which cleans the pond water, and what you now have is shisha, the drink that the Achuar people drink. That itself seems weird. You are drinking the saliva, the spit of the womenfolk of this tribe, that's how they survive. But it gets weirder. Sam asks you if you want to spend the night, and you say yes because you really want to discover this weird world that Sam lives in. So you go to bed, and it's a normal bed, it's comfortable. But at 4 a.m., Sam bursts through the door and wakes you up, and he says, hey, are you awake? It's time to have tea. So you get up and you say, look, I'll be happy to have tea with you, let me just go brush my teeth. And he goes, no, we don't have toothbrushes in this home. Instead, drink this tea, it'll solve the same problem. So he gives you this tea, and it's an interesting taste, and it tastes good. But as soon as you finish taking it, you feel the uncontrollable urge to puke. And you go to the bathroom and you start puking and puking and puking, and you realize everyone in the family is puking, but they are smiling about it. They then gather back in the circle. Sam, knowing that everyone has now finished their morning puke, goes into a discussion on your dreams. And everyone in that family circle starts talking about their dreams, their lucid dreams, adventures they had in their dreams, insights, intuitions that came to them while they were asleep. Except you, because you're a modern man, you can barely remember what you dreamt about. But to the rest of them, their dream world is as real as our physical world. But the story doesn't end there. Later on that day, Sam asks you if you'd like to pray to the gods with him. And you're expecting an altar or a shrine, but instead he gives you a medicine. It's what we now call ayahuasca. You take it, and again you have the uncontrollable urge to puke because ayahuasca is a poison. But then as you lie down on that couch, you have the most insane visions. It's like you're seeing the world as fractals, and insights, downloads come to you. And you realize now how the Achua communicate with what they say are higher powers. Now think about all of that, right? Not drinking water, praying with ayahuasca as a drug to help you connect to a higher power, having morning discussions at 4 a.m. with family people over your dreams. All of these are so different from anything that you would experience in modern society. Yet to the Achua, it's completely real. We might say it's bizarre, but think about it. To the Achua people looking at our life, we would be completely primitive and bizarre. Because let's look at the statistics. If you look at modern human society, there are so many amazing things we've built, but there are so many things that we're doing right now which are fundamentally failing. Think about this. Over 50% of marriages end in divorce. Yet, we go into marriage promising we will be together till death do us part. So many people in modern societies like America are developing allergies. Allergies that are not as apparent in other parts of the world. Peanut allergies, for example. Allergies to nuts are dominant in many American kids, not in French children. And then look at work. In a recent Gallup study, over close to 50% of Americans are dissatisfied with work. Yet we spend 70% of our waking hours at work, yet half of us are unhappy about it. So even our work life is, in a way, a failure. We are doing something with our waking hours that we fundamentally feel dissatisfied with. Then you look at learning. Yes, we learn, but most people, when they reach adulthood, stop learning after college. And not only do they stop learning, but learning is seen as a pain. Because when they were growing up, they were put into schooling systems that through standardized testing, boring lectures, uninspired teachers, made them take what is such a core aspect of human life, learning and growth, and made it a chore. So they see learning as something that you do not want to do, and they'd much rather vegetate in front of a television. Now, look at exercise and health. There is a health movement going on. We're moving towards healthier foods. But still today, 1 in 3 American children are obese. In some countries, 40 to 60% of adult populations are obese. So obviously, in terms of our health, we also haven't really nailed it. So you can look at almost every aspect of human society, and there are things that the Achua people might find fundamentally bizarre. One of the most bizarre, and it's so alien that we don't even see how strange it is this. Remember what I said about the Achua people coming together at 4 a.m. discussing their dreams. So I was having a conversation with Ken Wilber, who is one of America's greatest living philosophers. And I asked Ken, what is it that you would change about the education system? What is one of the primary gaps? And he says, well, our modern Western education system teaches us to function in the physical world, but unlike indigenous cultures, they do not teach us to function with our spirit, with our soul. Think about the Achua people and how to them, the dream world is completely real. To us, most people barely know how to meditate. So if you look at all of these things, there are aspects about our culture that are, you could say, fundamentally broken. How do we go about fixing them? What we are looking to do with consciousness engineering is to look at why are these things broken, look at the root cause, and then give people a framework to patch up all these areas of their life that can be transformed. So we look at love, human learning, work, careers, meaning. We look at situations where people are growing up in guilt or shame due to dogma that was imported on them. We look at how people exercise, how they read books, how they create new products or companies. And for each of these things, we're seeking out optimized models that are better than what are out there in the world. The thing is, all of these models exist. There are better ways to do all of these things. And when you stumble upon some of these newer models, my God, it is mind-blowing. Here at Mindvalley, we spend so much time just talking about, amongst ourselves, these new models that we're discovering. New models of everything from how to read a book at 10x the regular speed to how to get in amazing shape without having to go through fad diets or without over-exercising. New models are emerging all the time on how to transform every area of how you live life. The problem is, they don't get into the education system. So there's a lot of innovation right now in education in terms of technology. There's very little innovation in terms of curriculum. Consciousness engineering is our project to bring together many of the world's greatest minds to create a new curriculum for education. It is vast. It transforms multiple dimensions of being human. But to use it, you have to learn the framework that I'm about to teach you. So in this class, we're going to cover the reasons why we view and we function in the world the way we do. And when you can see this, you take the first step towards coming out of these patterns. Then I'm going to give you an exercise that you can do to carve up your life into 12 different dimensions. And I'm going to give you a thought process to apply to these dimensions so that you get to have extraordinary success in all of these areas. This is not just goal setting. This is a far more advanced process that sets you on the path to consciousness engineering, to being able to advance, develop, expand your awareness of the multitude of possibilities out there in terms of new beliefs you can take on in the world and new systems you can apply to truly live extraordinary. So let's get started. So let me give you an idea of what I've been able to do once I learned consciousness engineering and what I went through before figuring it out. So I grew up in an Indian family. And if you grew up in an Indian family, you know that there's always a big push to be a lawyer or a doctor or an engineer. So I decided that I wanted to study computer engineering. But it wasn't because I genuinely loved computer engineering. In fact, I couldn't stand math. And computer engineering requires a lot of math. But in the school I went to, the general rule was that if you were smart, you became an engineer. So I worked my butt off to get good grades. I hated what I was doing, but I worked my butt off to get good grades. I got into a college. I didn't go to a college I really wanted to. I went to the University of Michigan. Cold, frigid Michigan, because they had a good computer engineering school. I enrolled in that computer engineering school, and for the next 4 years, I hated college. I didn't enjoy the lectures. I sucked at my mathematics classes. I was a failing student. My GPA was under 2.5. The only classes I enjoyed were theater, were photography, were classes in arts, but I couldn't do that because, you know, society says you can't make money as an artist. So I became a computer engineer. And I remember the day I had my interview with Microsoft. This was a big deal. Microsoft interviews people all around the world, and only 1% get flown to Seattle for the final rounds and then come in as interns. I made that 1%. I got a job at Microsoft. I remember getting my own office, 3 computer monitors. I was working on a team called the Windows Shell team to help refine and improve the Windows operating system as a bug tester. And I hated it. I realized that for 5 years I'd been bracing for this moment. Everyone I knew was excited that I got into Microsoft. My family was happy. But in my first week of the job, I realized how miserable I was. And I was so miserable that I sucked at it. My manager started giving me warning letters, and 11 weeks after getting that job, I was fired. And when I was fired, I remember being in a taxi, driving to the airport in Seattle to fly back home. I was happy. I had certainly realized that I'd been chasing the wrong career for almost 5 years. So what did I do then? I started doing what I really loved. I worked for a nonprofit. I became a meditation instructor. I experimented with everything from being a photographer to writing. None of these made me as much money, but I loved doing it. And as I continued learning, growing, I continued studying. I went through ups and downs. There were times when I was unemployed. There were times when I was completely broke. If you were to go through, in fact, recently, I shared my resume, list of jobs I had as I was growing up on Facebook. And the post went viral because it is hilarious how all over the place I was. I'd been a dishwasher. I'd been a photojournalist. I had been a non-profit vice president. I had been unemployed multiple times. But as I went through this journey, I learned. I continued growing and learning and growing. And that led to where I am today. So let's look at my career today, right? Today, I'm in an interesting position. I consider myself extremely lucky. I've hacked my life so that every 6 months, I get all expenses paid to go for a vacation on a paradise island. I get to stay in a 5-star hotel. I've been to places like Hawaii, Costa Rica, Maui, Dubrovnik, Croatia. And in this 5-star hotel, they give me the presidential suite. I get to spend a week in the presidential suite at the world's greatest hotels every 6 months, but it gets better. Some of the world's most remarkable individuals, from movie stars to writers to CEOs to scientists and engineers, fly down from all across the world to come and join me in this hotel at their expense. 200 to 300 people at a time. At night, we have the most amazing dinners and celebrations and parties, and I get to connect and mingle as the host with everyone there. In the daytime, we gather together and share best practices and discussion groups and share ideas on personal growth and living and transforming the world. This is what my passion is, connecting with people, having fun, celebration, but also learning and growth. Now, I've hacked my life so that every 6 months I get to experience this. And this to me is like a career, just like being a doctor or an engineer, but it's so much more fun. Now, if you've been following my work, you know that I'm talking about Awesomeness Fest. I built that up as a separate company 6 years ago, and that's what it's given me right now. If I were to do nothing else except Awesomeness Fest, I would be a truly happy man, because I have friends who are among the most influential people in the world. I get to celebrate and play in the most exotic locations. I get to learn and grow. Now, I could go from being a broke, unhappy engineer, from being unemployed, to creating a life where I have Awesomeness Fest because of this process of rethinking and hacking the world that I've been fine-tuning for the last decade. And I know that if you learn this too, no matter where you are in your life, you'd be able to shape these new visions for yourself. Awesomeness Fest isn't a career path. Nobody goes to school to get a degree on how to start their own movement or festival. And so this isn't an education in anything which is a set career path or a set way of building the world. Rather, it's an education in how to think so you can see the world as malleable, as something where you can step outside the bounds of how normal human beings think and create your own structures for your own happiness, for the own things that give you meaning. So now you can see just how powerful this is. You can see how this can take you from being dissatisfied in your career to creating whole new aspects of work or career that do not currently exist in modern society. But now we got to give you the thinking mechanism to get you there. So let's get started. The first thing you have to understand to be a master of consciousness engineering is how human beings evolved. See, we learn evolution, but a lot of us have the wrong idea of evolution. We think that mankind evolved slowly from apes to Neanderthals to Homo erectus to Homo sapiens. That was an older model of evolution. Today, scientists, anthropologists know that actually multiple types of humans existed on the planet at the same time. Homo neanderthalis was a human. That's Neanderthals. Homo florensis were humans. These were humans who were about 3.5 feet tall and lived in islands near Indonesia. There was Homo erectus, Homo habilis, Homo sapiens. All of these were human beings, but one survived. The one that survived was the Homo sapien. Why is it that Neanderthals died out, even though they had bigger brains, even though they were brawnier, even though they had been on the planet longer than Homo sapiens? Well, anthropologists think that it's because Homo sapiens had developed the faculty of language. See, early apes could say phrases such as, "Look out, there's a tiger." But humans could say, "Hey, don't go to the river until midday, because I saw a tiger wandering along the area." Now, as language developed, it allowed us to create constructs in our mind, constructs that made Homo sapiens superior to other humans of that time. Now, this is a mind-blowing idea to think that we were once not the only humans on the planet, but we dominated the others. Because of language, we went into what Yuval Harari in his book Sapiens calls the cognitive revolution. Language allowed us to separate ourselves from animals. It allowed us to create stories, mythology, meaning, religion, villages, tribes. It allowed us to mobilize, to create culture, to create nations, city-states. Language allowed us to thus function in two worlds. There's the physical world. Every human being will agree on certain aspects of the physical world. We agree that rain falls from the sky and is made of water. We agree that a particular rock might be gray or black or white. But there's a second world we live in, and this is the world of mental constructs that we've created in our head because of our ability to use words and language. This is a world where you have things which are non-tangible. See, that revolution started 30,000 years ago. In Yuval Harari's book, he shows you the image of this particular wood carving that was discovered. It shows a lion with the body of a man. Now think about that for a moment. A lion with the body of a man doesn't exist, but it can exist in the human mind. And because of that mental construct, the human being could go out and create a representative of this. Thoughts and ideas shape our world. Now, it's not just wood carvings. Think about the concept of a company. Again, in the book, Yuval Harari talks about the idea that a company is really nothing more than a piece of paper that gives certain rights to an organization. So, a company may not have an office, it may not have any products, it may not have any employees, but as long as that piece of paper exists, we agree that the company is real. Likewise, our laws. You cannot see a law or touch a law, but laws, from the laws of Hammurabi from 3,000 years ago to the Declaration of Independence and the Bill of Rights, all help us run and govern our physical world. But you cannot see or touch a law. Now let's go to something deeper. God. What is God? You cannot see God, you cannot touch God, but according to at least one person I've interviewed, Tom Chi, the inventor of the Google Glass, God exists and is real because it exists as a syntax in the human mind. Likewise, meditation. Meditation isn't something you can see. You can see someone in a particular pose that might be meditation, but you cannot see or touch meditation. Yet, meditation, even though it's just a concept in the human mind, over 1,400 studies shows that it actually has beneficial effects on the human body. So our mental constructs have an impact in the world. Our thoughts and beliefs literally shape our world. Whether you are an Achuar tribes person or you're a modern American male, your thoughts and beliefs create your world. In 1997, as a photographer, I traveled to the former Yugoslavia. I was a photojournalist back then, and I was there to take photography of the former Yugoslavia that had just come out of an extremely devastating war. What had happened in the former Yugoslavia is that groups of people who spoke the same language, who were the same ethnicity, had gone to war with each other. And in that time, from 1992 to 1995, Europe saw some of its most devastating horrors since World War II. I remember visiting the city of Sarajevo, and it was shocking to learn about the crimes, the murders, the pillaging that had happened there. Over 156,000 people died in that war in 3 years. 10,000 people were missing. 2.3 million people were displaced. It was the most devastating conflict in Europe since World War II. But here's what I found interesting. When I was in Sarajevo as a photojournalist, I took these photographs. These photographs showed buildings that had been burnt down or had their upper floors taken apart by sniper fire. I saw bullet holes on walls, men with no legs because they had stepped on landmines. Even the mannequins in Sarajevo were sad. There was so much grief and sadness in that city because it had just come out of a war 6 months before I went there. What I found mind-blowing, hard to swallow, painful almost, was that so much death and destruction occurred in that area because beliefs went dysfunctional. These were people who had one way of believing in God, fighting with other people who were the same ethnicity, spoke the same language, because they had another way of believing in God. We won't get into the politics of what happened, but it was enough to see that when beliefs get warped through bad leadership, bad ideas, through ideas such as us versus them, human beings can do absolutely insane things. So we know that beliefs have the power to destroy. But on the flip side, I've also witnessed situations where the right beliefs, the right models of the world, have the capacity to create absolutely amazing things. So I want to share with you another beautiful journey I had from 2 months ago, where I got to meet one of America's greatest inventors. So maybe you've heard of a Segway. That's me riding around in a Segway. You can see how excited I am to be riding that machine. It's a beautiful device. I got to visit the home of the inventor of the Segway. He didn't just invent the Segway, he invented multiple new machines and tools which are changing lives around the world. That's his island, North Dumpling Island in Long Island Sound. Dean thinks about the world in a very different way. That's Dean's home on North Dumpling Island. It's a former lighthouse. And I want to show you this. This is a view from the top of that lighthouse. Now you'll notice how tiny the island is. You'll see several helicopters there. Dean owns his own helicopter company. And you'll see a wind turbine. And you'll see a windmill. So the story begins with the windmill you see in this video. Dean told me the story. It is hilarious, but it also shows just how much you can do when you think outside the box, when you think outside the rules of modern society. So Dean wanted to erect a windmill on North Dumpling Island, but he had to get permission from the state of New York. Now the state of New York said, absolutely not. Windmills make noise. Your neighbors will be complaining. Now Dean was very frustrated. He can't stand bureaucrats. He said, look, guys, it is an island. I own the entire island. There are no neighbors to complain. But still, the state of New York would not let him erect the windmill. So Dean decided to do what any normal, intelligent man who refuses to give up would do. He decided he was going to secede from the state of New York. Instead, in fact, he decided, forget just New York, I'm going to secede from the United States of America because I cannot deal with this bureaucracy. And Dean did just that. He found a loophole in constitutional law. He went and visited one of the foremost constitutional lawyers from Harvard, found a loophole, and decided that North Dumpling Island isn't really part of the United States. It never was. When the Declaration of Independence was signed, North Dumpling Island had its own Declaration of Independence, modeled just after the US Declaration, but with a few lines changed. Lines on, for example, the worth of slaves. Now Dean went further. He created a constitution for North Dumpling Island, his own currency, the dumpling dollar, his own diplomatic stamp, his own national anthem. But he didn't stop there. He signed a non-aggression pact with the United States president of that time. That's Dean with the president. Being an incredible American inventor, he knew all the presidents from Bill Clinton to George Bush. He had George Bush sign a non-aggression pact declaring that the United States would never invade North Dumpling Island. Now, the bureaucrats in New York were not amused, so they sent him more letters saying, take down the windmill or you'll be in trouble. Now, what he did then is he took that letters and he sent it to major New York newspapers, and he said, look at the gall of these politicians in New York State. They are threatening a head of state of a foreign nation. And soon the bureaucrats stopped sending him letters because every time they sent him letters, he would flip it around and send it to the New York newspapers. Now at this point, an American morning show got interested, so they decided to film a show on the newest nation in North America. And Dean told me the story about how he went to the TV host and he said, would you like to exchange your US dollars for the dumpling dollar? And the TV host said, oh, come on, Dean. The dumpling dollar, we know it isn't real. And this was Dean's reply. He said, well, actually, it is. Let me tell you this. Your American dollar was once backed on the gold reserve, but the gold reserve was taken away. So technically, your American dollar is backed on nothing. Our dumpling dollar, on the other hand, is backed by Ben and Jerry's ice cream. Dean, being friends with Ben and Jerry, had actually gotten Ben and Jerry, the original Ben and Jerry, to declare that they would back up the dumpling dollar with Ben and Jerry's ice cream. And so Dean told the TV host, so your US dollar is basically backed by nothing. Ours is backed by ice cream, which A, is something, And secondly, since it's cooled to 0 degrees centigrade, 32 degrees Fahrenheit, it's rock solid, unlike your US dollar. Now, Dean didn't stop there. He then donated $100 in foreign aid to the United States. That is a certificate from President George Bush thanking North Dumpling Island for its foreign aid donation to the United States of $100. Dean thus made North Dumpling Island the first nation in the world to give foreign aid to the United States. Now, you may be wondering, what's the point? All for a windmill? Actually, no. See, the reason Dean did all of this is because he loves America. What he really wanted to do